Hey guys, Paul here. I just got back from YCS Houston where Konami revealed the latest TCG ban list update. Live in person, I was there. It was really cool, very hype. People were really excited. And I wanted to talk a little bit about it. Not as like a ban list reaction video. I mean, obviously it's been out for a whole day now. People have seen it. You've watched people's videos on it. Like, you've formed an opinion. That's fine. I more so wanted to just talk about some of the interesting, like, implications, observations I've observed, and thoughts I have about like the way that Konami is kind of handling ban lists now, and get people's opinions on it. Also, if my voice sounds really scuffed, it's because it is. My voice went out post-event sickness. It happens. I wanted to make a bigger video about like my whole experience there, but I'll just have to try to do it tomorrow if I feel a little bit better. Anyway, though, that's not what you're here to talk about. We're here to talk a little bit about the way that Konami is handling ban lists recently. I've got a couple of things that I've seen and noticed and like thoughts that I have. So the first major one is that this is the second event in a row now where Konami has unveiled the new ban list as part of a live stream. So basically, like, they're doing the whole thing where after the finals, you stick around and Konami will show the ban list, usually with some fun little skit that Jerome has prepared. And I think that this is a good thing. I think this is a trend that we'll probably see continue for a couple of reasons. Mostly because like it's a good way to galvanize the community. It gives people kind of a reason to tune into the live streams because YCS live streams are obviously pretty big. Like, a lot of people do watch them and people restream them, but I think that by turning it into more of an event, because ban lists are already sort of like this, I don't know, again, it's not like an annual event, but like, this recurring event within the community that kind of gets everybody interested in watching. And they've seen record numbers of viewership on these live streams because people, find out that the ban list is going to be there. So you got to like watch the top 8, watch the finals. You want to be there when it's shown and like kind of tweet your live responses or record it or whatever. And so I think for that reason, it's really good. I also think that in general, it's like a nice kind of reason for somebody to maybe want to go to their first YCS if they suspect that the ban list will be presented there. So that's really cool. And also, I think that like by having them at events, it just seems like it fosters more goodwill. Like, when you just drop these ban lists on random Tuesdays or Wednesdays, I think that didn't really help with the optics of like, man, we just don't get ban list dates, we don't get patch notes, they just drop in the middle of the week, there's no telling, people are spamming, vomiting horse memes. So I think having them at events kind of is a good way to anchor the ban list announcements. So I think we'll definitely see more of that. The next thing, though, on like the topic of the actual list itself, is that it seems like we are getting these ban lists about 3 times a year now instead of 4. So obviously there are no set ban list dates, but if we sort of look at the last few, getting one in early December and now getting one in early April sort of seems to suggest that we're going to be maybe getting roughly 4-month formats as opposed to for a while where we were getting kind of like 3-month formats. Obviously, Konami is going to keep that door open so that they can just sort of decide as they feel like. But it would sort of make sense that we'd probably get another ban list in August, which would make sense as like a post-national season ban list. So basically, we have our summer format pretty much decided. The deck that you'll be playing in your sort of final regional qualifiers and the last few like YCSs and NAWCQ and stuff, that's pretty much like what this is, in addition to whatever cards just get released in the next few sets. And I think that's actually a good thing because for me anyway, I feel like the 3-month formats just felt a little bit too rapid fire. I think that it just feels like there's not enough time for people to really get used to a format, and I think that it also sort of, I don't know, this might be a strong word, but I feel like it almost promotes the idea of sort of complaining and impatience from a lot of the players, where it's just like a new ban list drops, people aren't happy with it, and they already are kind of like, this format sucks, when's the next ban list? And I think that when it's like coming every 3 months, it just accelerates that cycle, and I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I think that like slightly longer formats are good. Let people really like learn the format. Let the cards ride their way out. See if something's truly a problem as opposed to like just more reactionary hits and stuff. So I think this is a good thing. Now, as for the list itself, because that's obviously very important, you guys all know what the hits were. I don't really have to reiterate what they were, but a few interesting trends that I just wanted to point out since I have the opportunity. The first one is that I think that Konami is finally trying to use the semi-limited list, and that's something that's really interesting because it's we just haven't used that in a really long time in this game. Like, for a very long time, the semi-limited list was basically like the Destiny Hero Malicious list, and Konami didn't use it much. They would not semi-limit mini cards, or it was maybe kind of just a holding area for a card that had been like limited to come to like 2 and then finally to 3. So it's just like, sort of a routine thing in that way. But this time they obviously went really hard on hits to Malice and Ryzeal with semi-limits. And it's interesting because this is something that feels pretty directly inherited from the OCG and maybe Master Duel if you've been playing it, where those formats are a lot more likely to put cards to 2. And it's a bit of a mixed bag. I know that people have very different opinions on whether or not cards should go to 2 because that's sort of a consistency hit as opposed to maybe a hit to like actual combos that decks can do or actual inboards that decks can make. And so as a result, I think that you end up with a sort of bit of a divide of like, is that an effective way to hit a deck? It's also, it makes for a large semi-limited list, so there's a lot more like stuff to double check if you're like, doing a deck list or whatever. But I kind of like it. I think that one of the big issues that I heard a lot of people talking about just this weekend around like Ryzeal and stuff is just how consistent the deck is. How many starters that, oh my god, the lighting just changed a lot. How many starters that the deck has access to, and just how it can be sort of difficult to use hand traps against them because of all the starters and like extenders that they have. And technically, yes, none of that really changes. Just because these cards are at 2 or whatever, it doesn't mean that like they're really much less effective at doing it. But having fewer or like slightly less consistent starter cards is, I'm interested in seeing kind of how that goes because I just feel like the TCG has never done this. The same sort of applies to Malice with like Dormouse and stuff. So yeah, that's kind of cool. I will say that I tentatively like it. I'm also more of a Master Duel player myself, so I'm sort of used to these types of hits. I do think that there's a little bit more nuance to it than just, oh, consistency hits suck. Because with consistency hits, you can also sort of better, at least in my opinion, you can better map out how you interact with cards because like you can sort of know if a certain thing gets searched, you can now like, for me anyway, it's easier to track how many copies are left in the deck or like how many, just copies are maybe in their hand on the field in circulation, stuff like that. So that can come up sometimes. It also seems like this is a better way of preserving archetypes. So instead of being like, okay, we're gonna like ban some Ryzeal card or ban some Malice card, instead we can just sort of semi-limit them and let that sort of just ride out instead. And the cards that seemed like they were more so aimed for on the like limited and ban side are the staples. And I think that's generally good. It rewards people for like, investing in archetypes because like you don't really like the feeling of your entire archetype becoming unplayable. So it's better that just maybe more generic cards are getting hit for being too strong. At least that's just an opinion that I have. The second thing is that it feels like Konami's finally kind of cracking down on like the less honest cards. Like we've seen Floodgates get the boot for basically the better part of the last year of Yu-Gi-Oh! Just a lot of the Floodgate traps getting hit. And finally, they're getting around to more of just the turn skip like monster effects. Your Dimension Shifter at 1, your Abyss Dweller, Nightmare Griffin, which is another one of those cards where it's never really up to anything honest or good. So getting rid of those cards, I think, is probably just good for pleasing the player base. People really don't like non-games. I know that there are defenders of cards like Dimension Shifter. I'm like on the fence about the card. Like I don't think that it's the worst thing in the world, but I totally get why people don't like it. So, on the whole, getting rid of these types of cards, I think will make people more happy. I know that just at the YCS, there were a lot of people whose runs were just ended by, a shifter, and that just doesn't always feel great. So, probably for the best. And also the hits to Crossout Designator and Triple Tactics Talent, not Thrust, I was about to say Thrust, are some interesting ones too, because I feel like those cards are both obscenely like just rude, strong, powerful cards, but they're not, they're a little bit deceptive in the sense that like, I think on the more like casual and mid-core ends of the spectrum, cards like Triple Tactics Talent and Crossout Designator don't really feel particularly scary or threatening. Like, I mean, they're obviously still good, but I feel like at the higher levels of play, I know that those cards can be really big game deciders. Crossout Designator in particular is just like, it's an answer to hand traps, but it also means people have to run more hand traps, and it's just like, is this like what we want? I'm not taking a strong stance on one way or the other, but I guess I would say like, I don't like the idea of people having to run like 20 hand traps plus 3 crossouts, and like, most of the hand traps are one-offs meant to stop other hand traps. A funny experience I had at the event playing in a side event, Attack of the Giant card, somebody bricked and lost to me in one round because they drew all of their crossout designator targets that they'd sided in, thinking that I was going to side in those cards against them. So it was like a Ryzeal player who'd sided in like Lightning Storm and stuff against me, more so thinking that I was going to side like Lightning Storm and certain other things against him. It's like, and then he bricked. It was like a whole thing. And so I was just like, wow, that's, I guess that's the risk of running cross out. But yeah, it's a very powerful, polarizing card. Same goes for Triple Tactics Talent. I think that that card is also kind of belligerent. It can be really game deciding. So putting those sorts of staples to one, fine by me. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I mainly want to know what people think about the optics of this ban list. It's one of the larger ones that we've had recently. Interestingly enough, though, the one in December was also pretty big. So just we've been getting some chunky ban lists lately. How do you feel about like this whole putting lots of cards to two? How do you feel about some of the less honest, just sort of, some people call them cheater cards, like Shifter and, the banning of like Griffin and Abyss Dweller and even like Bahamut Shark and stuff. How do we feel about that? And yeah, cool. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts. I know I'm kind of late to this, but I was actually just at the event having a lot of fun, meeting a lot of people, so I didn't really feel like I needed to record things. I don't want to say I'm like checked out of like caring about the competitive TCG because obviously I was competing as well, but more like, there's like a million ban list reaction videos. You can kind of form your own thing with that. I'm more interested though in like how often you think ban lists need to be coming out. What do you think of the whole like revealing them during live streams thing, and just in general, what do you think about like this newfound process of hitting more floodgates, kind of going light on the consistency hits for engines, and that sort of thing. Okay, I've gone on long enough. I need some sort of like a cough drop or something because I'm kind of dying over here. But I hope you guys liked it, and I'll try to have some better voiced videos in the future. All right, cool. I'll talk to you guys later. Fast turn.